98 Africans arrived at Annapolis Harbor on September 29, 1760 aboard the ship Lord Ligonier. 42 people had died during the journey across the ocean. Among the survivors was a 17-year-old Mandinka warrior who would spend the next 50 years refusing to forget who he was. Records from Spotsylvania County, Virginia show that a slave was purchased that October and given the name Toby. What those records do not show, what plantation books intentionally left out, and what family Bibles refused to record, was the organized effort to erase not only one man's identity, but the living memory of an entire culture. This is the story of how one African turned cruelty meant to destroy him into a legacy that lasted far longer than his captors. What you are about to hear was hidden by more than 2 centuries of silence, and the truth is far more disturbing than most people have ever been taught. The details of what followed come from sources that took nearly 200 years to come to light. The Gambia River cut through West Africa like an open wound, allowing British ships to travel deeper inland than anywhere else along the coast. By 1767, the trading post on James Island had processed tens of thousands of captured Africans. At the same time, tobacco plantations in Virginia demanded more labor than ever before. Wars between nearby kingdoms created opportunities for slave raids, and the British Royal Africa Company paid high prices for young men trained as warriors. In the village of Jofore, about 2 miles from the British fort, the Kinte family kept their reputation as blacksmiths and holy men despite constant danger. The Mandinka people survived for generations by appearing cooperative while secretly protecting their traditions. Children were taught to avoid the river, never walk alone into the forest, and run immediately if they saw the slate. African slave traders who worked for Europeans, Omoro Kinte understood these threats better than most. As a blacksmith, he had seen iron shackles used on captives. He had heard stories of villages wiped out overnight, and families sold apart from one another. He taught his oldest son the art of drumming, not only for culture but for survival. A man who could make instruments might be kept alive on a slave ship to raise the spirits of others. The boy's name had deep meaning. Kunta meant whole or complete, a name often given to firstborn sons expected to carry on family honor. By 17, he had completed his manhood training, learned to hunt with a spear, and could recite his family line back 7 generations. Village elders believed he would one day become a respected leader. One morning in early July of 1767, Kunta went into the forest near Jofure to gather wood for making drums. The hardwood he needed grew several miles away, far enough to be risky but common enough that young men often made the trip. He carried no weapon. Sacred gathering grounds were not used for hunting, and he moved with confidence, shaped by a lifetime on those paths. What Kunta did not know was that British Colonel O'Hare's forces had arrived at James Island 3 days early with orders to supply a large shipment of enslaved people to Virginia. The Lord Ligonier waited offshore, and its captain was under pressure to fill all 140 spaces before bad weather arrived. 4 slates had been watching Kunta since he left the village. They were skilled professionals who had perfected ambush tactics through many captures. They attacked fast and silently. In less than 2 minutes, Kunta went from a free man to property. He was dragged to a holding area near the river where more than 20 captives were chained inside a temporary enclosure. Some came from nearby villages. Others had been taken weeks earlier from far inland. All showed the same fear and shock. For 3 days, Kunta remained there under harsh conditions. Food and water were scarce. Days were hot, nights cold. Guards beat anyone who made too much noise. When the Lord Ligonier's crew arrived, a British surgeon examined the captives as if they were animals. Kunta passed the inspection. At 17, he was exactly what Virginia plantations wanted. The transfer from shore to ship happened in small boats carrying 10 captives at a time. Sailors worked quickly and efficiently, knowing that seeing the ship often caused panic. Everyone remained chained. Kunta's first view of the Lord Ligonier showed him this was not a small raid. It was a system built over decades. The ship had been designed to transport human bodies as cargo, packing as many people as possible into tight spaces. Below deck, conditions were unbearable. The ceiling was barely 5 feet high. Each person was given about 16 inches of width and 6 feet of length. Wooden platforms split the space into 2 levels, doubling the number of captives. People were chained in pairs at the ankles, making movement impossible. Extra chains attached them to the walls so no one could reach the stairs. Survival depended on the person you were chained to. Kunta was chained to a man named Fanta from a village 50 miles away. Though their dialects differed, their Mandinka roots allowed basic communication. Fanta explained ship routines, when food arrived, which sailors were cruelest, and how to position the body to ease pain. The ship stayed anchored another week while more captives were loaded. During this time, times worsened. Food came once a day, beans and yams served in shared buckets. Water was limited, waste buckets overflowed, and the crew washed the deck only every few days. Disease spread quickly. Dysentery appeared within days. Fever followed. Men died without treatment. The surgeon only recorded deaths, concerned with profit rather than care. On July 5, 1767, the Lord Ligonier left Africa with 140 captives below deck. The middle passage lasted weeks. For the captives, time became an endless cycle of pain broken only by brief moments on deck. British rules required daily forced exercise to reduce deaths and protect profit. During these moments, captives shared information. A man who understood some English said they were headed to Annapolis. They would be sold to tobacco plantation. Most were expected to die within 10 years. Some talked of rebellion, but chains and weapons made success unlikely. Kunta listened but stayed silent. His father had taught him that warriors fight only when victory is possible. 3 weeks into the voyage, fever returned. Men died still chained. Fanta became sick during the 4th week. Before dying, he apologized to Kunta. Kunta spent 18 hours chained to Fanta's body. Afterward, his chain was fixed to the wall, leaving him isolated. This was not meant as punishment. There were simply not enough survivors left. During the 7th week, a violent storm struck. Waves flooded the hold with filthy water mixed with waste. Bodies armed against wood as the ship rolled. For 4 days, no food or water came below deck. 18 more people died. Captain Davies recorded 42 deaths, a 30% loss. High but acceptable. During the 9th week, something changed in Kunta's mind. Trauma slowly stripped away identity, but one thing remained beyond control: his name. In Mandinka culture, names held power. As long as he remembered his name and his ancestors, part of him remained free. Each morning on deck, he silently repeated his lineage. I am Kunta Kinte, son of Amoro Kinte, grandson of Kairaba Kinte, of the Kinte family of Jufura. Memory became resistance. On September 29, 1762, the Lord Ligonier entered Annapolis harbor. 98 Africans survived. They were advertised as choice, healthy slaves. Kunta was bought by John Waller of Spotsylvania County, Virginia. In Waller's ledger it was written that the slave was given the name Toby. When called by that name, Kunta answered clearly, "My name is Kunta Kinte." Violence followed, and it did not end there. Even though Kunta could no longer run or work in the fields, he found ways to survive and resist quietly. He married a woman named Belle, who had also been brought from Africa. Together they had children. He taught them what he had learned in secret: stories of Africa, the meaning of their names, and the importance of remembering who they were. He made sure they understood that no chains could take away their identity unless they allowed it. Every day, he whispered the words of his ancestors, told them about the Niger River, about their home village, and about the traditions that slavery tried to erase. Kunta's children grew up under the constant threat of violence, but they learned patience, cleverness, and the power of memory. He taught them small lessons about survival: how to speak just enough English to avoid trouble, how to work without being noticed, how to find small joys in food, music, and each other. The plantation owners did not understand that Kunta's real power was in what could not be seen: the stories, the lessons, the unbroken sense of self that he passed to his children. Even though his foot was maimed, his body scarred, his mind and spirit remained free. Over the years, Kunta's children and grandchildren carried his stories in their hearts. They spoke them in whispers, in song, and in dreams. These stories were their inheritance, more precious than any gold or land. They reminded them that they were more than what the slaveholders called them, more than the work they were forced to do. Generations later, the stories reached Alex Haley, who was determined to find his roots. He traveled across the South, listening to old tales, piecing together names, places, and events. He found that the strength, courage, and unbroken spirit of Kunta Kinte had survived through time, even when the world tried to erase it. Through Haley's work, Kunta's story became known far beyond the small community of Virginia. People everywhere learned about the boy from Africa who refused to be called Toby, who ran for freedom, who suffered great pain but never gave up his name. His legacy became a symbol of resilience. It reminded everyone that even in the darkest circumstances, the human spirit can remain free, and identity cannot be taken unless it is willingly surrendered. Kunta's story was not just history, it became a lesson for the future, a reminder that remembering where you come from and holding on to who you are can never be punished into silence. And so, even hundreds of years later, when people speak the name Kunta Kinte, they speak of courage, resistance, and the power of remembering. Perfect. I see you've pasted the last part we wrote. Let's continue with the final part, showing Kunta's legacy and the journey of his descendants after slavery, in the same simple, flowing style with slight wording changes. After slavery ended, Kunta's descendants faced a new world, one that promised freedom but was full of challenges. They had to rebuild lives from scratch, learning new trades, finding homes, and protecting their families. The chains were gone, but discrimination and danger remained. Still, the lessons Kunta had passed down gave them strength. They remembered his courage, the way he refused to surrender his name, and the small ways he had taught them to survive and hold on to dignity. That memory became a guide through the hard years. Why moved, married, and had children. They worked in fields, in cities, and in schools, always carrying stories of Africa and of the man who had never given up. Each generation added its own experiences, but the spirit of Kunta Kinte remained alive, whispered in families, remembered in songs, and honored in quiet acts of courage. When Alex Haley traced his family history, he showed the world how one life could ripple through generations. Kunta Kinte was not just a man from the past. He became a symbol for anyone whose identity had been threatened, anyone who had been forced to submit but refused. His story inspired books, plays, and shows. It reminded people that even when systems are cruel and oppressive, the human heart and mind can remain free. And it proved that history is not only about what was done to people, it is also about what they chose to carry with them, unseen but unbroken. Today, Kunta Kinte's legacy lives on in his descendants, in communities, and in the minds of people who learn his story. It is a story of resilience, of courage, and of remembering where you come from no matter how far you are taken from home. Even now, the name Kunta Kinte is more than a name. It is a call to remember, a reminder to resist erasure, and a testament to the power of holding on to who you truly are.